my friends, I'm Rick, and it's here to see you at the table. And of course, sitting over here to my right is little Missy, our little house guest, who's quietly behaving herself and listening to me ramble on all morning. Isn't that right there, little Missy? Yes. Yes, you had a little bit of adventure this morning, didn't you? We let you out for a little bit, and you promptly ran into the bedroom and got into a spat and match with one of the other kitties, didn't you? Yes, you did. Just trying to make friends. Just trying to make friends. Anyway, we are looking at BattleTech Field Manual for Draconis Combine. This would have been 3058, which would be just after the main festivities with the clans. And the Draconis Combine is ascendant. We've recovered considerably from their losses during the Fourth Succession War and the failed attempt at the 3039 ward by the Federated Sons. Speaking of the Federated Commonwealth, by the Federated Commonwealth, the sons and daughters of the FedCom are in the process of tearing each other apart and trying their level best to destroy everything their father and mother worked so hard to create. Meanwhile, Draconis Combine continues to get some insider help from elements within Comstar, although they won't talk about that. All right, some sort of a detente has been achieved between father and son. So Takashi and Theodore are still working hand in hand. They came together during the defense of Luthien against the clans, and ever since have been working more or less in step with promoting the best interests for the Draconis Combine and helping recover from the threat that the clans formerly presented. And so this was one of the latter series of source books put out by FASA, which is kind of a shame. I mean, to me it was anyway. The FASA things changed. I mean, it is what it is. Let's see what year was this? What year was this? 96, 97? 1996. Alright, so this book was published in 1996. I guess Bass has still got another 4 or 5 years left on the table. Honor of the Regiment, Introduction, Pillar of Steel, Samurai's Code, Bushido, and Combine. And unlike the house manuals, unlike the original house manuals that came first, the field manuals focus specifically on the militaries of the houses and the industries and training facilities and officer corps and any current political BS that needs to be addressed that affects the military and vice versa, as opposed to the original house books, which also highlighted things like education and culture and the economy and things like this. So those things were already covered and were not rehashed in the next series of books. So these books were to expand on those books by focusing on the core military units and all their functions. So if you look at the book itself, probably 70-80% of the book, let's say 70% of the book, is devoted to individual regiment units of the Draconis Combine. And you have a quite range of different forces here, but by no means all of them. That is something I've had that discussion a few times over the decades with players. That this is everything they have. No, it's not everything they have. Their numbers say otherwise. When they say they have 60 odd, they can field 60 regiments of battle mechs. They don't list all 60 regiments in these books. There's probably half as many, 35, 40 of them are listed. That means there's quite a few other regiments that either are not considered up to snuff, not considered frontline main house line troops. Perhaps they have regional ties or familial ties to, or nobility ties or corporate ties or whatever. But for one reason or another, they don't warrant enough space on the showcase roster. It doesn't mean they don't exist. And of course, that's the unending how many hundreds, how many thousands of infantry regiments alone do the average houses field? Well, we don't have books on those because you did have entire encyclopedic volumes devoted to things like that, and it's not likely to be feasible. Although my argument stands the same with mercenaries. No offense. I'll notice that Catalyst has done a far superior job because FanPro had a hard-on for mercenaries or something because they produce so many source books just for the mercenaries, and yet of the 5 or so that I've seen so far, they cover the lion's share of the same crap, which is, you know, cut your premier merc units and give them some spotlight. But for the love of Pete, 70, 60, 70% of those source books should have been unknown merc units, new units to us. So when they create books like these, so we've got the house manual, we got the field manual, and then what was the next series that come up? Something combat manual or something. Anyway, the point I'm getting at is that we're going back, of course, you know, 10 years, 20 years, 25-year window between this and the house books. In game linear time has passed. So revisiting the older units, so we're bringing them up to current levels is fine. I mean, I get that, and that's pretty much what they did. Still, if they were to build, you know, they were to have produced another set of books fairly close to these in the same, pretty much in the same era setting, then for love of Pete, there's no reason they couldn't expanded those to include additional units that are not covered in previous stuff. Anyway, that's just me and my blabber. These are great books. If you want to know from lore perspective your favorite faction, you want to know more about individual units. One of the things I loved about these books the most is because I'm such a huge fan of Battle Force. I would prefer Battle Force over BattleTech on a personal level, because I feel I enjoy the larger strategic scale that it represents, where we're talking companies and battalions and even regiments in the field on your tabletop field, as opposed to a lance or a company of on the field. It's just the grandeur of it, the larger need to push more pieces around it, be a much more rangier, have a wider range of tactical knowledge and strategy in my mind. It's just my personal opinion on it. So the point was, though, and I did some were floating around out there as a video, and I showed some of them. So what I used to do is I'd make these little took stickers and turned them into the images and the symbology and stuff for the units, and would create entire units for, like, I've got one for the third Sword of Light, for example, an entire regiment of Sword of Light and assortment. So I think I've got the equivalent of three or four battalions of combined troops that would be mech, aerospace, and or tank and infantry and stuff that would have been assigned as part of the third Sword of Light. And then I would have, that way when I chose to use that as my proxy for a battle on the field with one of my buddies, then I would be having the option of fielding what's on my TNR or TOE, and then I would have the little icon already, the little chits you need, little playing pieces you need, and all ready and set up to go. Real easy, because I was kind of weird that way. Anyway, BattleTech assets, aerospace assets, armor assets, infantry assets, unit organizations, uniforms, things like the standard stuff. Talking about the academies and universities, or sowing the dragon's teeth. Academies and universities. Enrollment, graduation, Aerospace and Interstellar Institute, Antang University, the Darien District Gymnasium, the Dover Institute for Higher Learning, the Galadon Military Academy, the Pagoda for Luthian Officers, the Zhangzhou School of Combat, the Zhangzhang MechWarrior Academy, the University of Proserpina, I never could pronounce that word correctly, Wisdom of the Dragon, Kensei Kami, Spirit of the Weapons Master. Right. So the Kensei Kami training program pits the best MechWarriors currently serving the DCMS against instructors and one another in an effort to push the elite generation to greater heights of skill. A sort of year-round master's program for the Combine's MechWarriors. For the Kensei Kami graduates, the class of every 3 months, only the most talented MechWarriors is given a regiment given regiment receives the honor of undergoing this training. So this is their version of the Top Gun program that the American Navy likes to use. Proving grounds. Infantry, armor, and aerospace battle. That proving ground is an important thing to make a point. The battles, the Draconis Combine mustered soldiery relies almost exclusively on its military academies and universities to produce a steady flow of soldiers into its ranks. While all citizens receive primary education, only those who score well enough to exit tests proceed to higher education, and the proctors recommend a much smaller fraction of those students to attend military academies and universities. Though the Ministry of War now acknowledges the true samurai may rise from the sources other than noble classes, it does not actively develop candidates from the lower social economic classes. However, quote, proving grounds, fields set up for practicing military maneuvers and honing combat skills offer citizens a low birth or low academic standing an avenue to develop and exhibit skills needed to enter the DCMS. General proving grounds are dedicated to a specific branch of warfare and operate according to a variety of administrative styles. The ISF maintains operatives at all proving grounds to scrutinize promising candidates for correct doctrine and loyalty to the Combine. The candidates approved by the ISF or those who produce an appropriate bribe generally receive invitations to study at military academies. Alright, so basically they have these training areas or testing areas that anybody can show up and try to take your chances. Show them your stuff. Show them that you're something a little bit more than your average whatever. So the Osaka Field is a place of refinement. DCMS rousters, the District of Alshaland. So we got into our various primary districts and their associated units. Now, most of the Draconis Combine is broken up into a handful of areas or regions, and each one has its own set of core units. And then the Kurita High Command, as desired, or whenever the coordinator tells them to, bolsters the district with this independent, that independent, and the occasional mercenary unit. So in a lot of aspects, that's one of the things that most houses have is what I call your line troops and your troubleshooters. So a little bit of both. And in this case, some of these house units, these straight line units, are no joke. They're some pretty tough hombres, and if you really play them well, I mean, the options are fairly endless of what you can do here. So, like I said, they come up with a number of other units that are considered independent. They don't have, generally as a rule, they don't have a whole lot of associate support units attached to them. That way they can be shifted around as well. Some of them are considered, I don't know, troublemaker units, like the Legion of Vega, for example. Others are geared to a specific minor minority within the house in the Combine in order to give them an outlet for military aggression and something that the house can tap into and take advantage of. Then there's a couple specific units. One of the things about the DCMS, if you played them at any length of time, is you begin to understand that wife's yelling at Fluffy because he wants to go back outside. Is that the predominantly lighter medium mech weight of the DCMS compared to a lot of their contemporaries, and that's actually by design more than by happenstance. So when we make the argument that the compelling Confederation also tends to be on the lighter, leaner side, but in their case it's out of necessity, in part because they lack the heavy foundries, or the heavy factories the factories to produce a lot of heavy and assault mechs. So what the limited production runs they do have, there just isn't enough to go around to beef up most of their units. So they've learned to adjust and to react accordingly. Whereas opposed to the DCMS, on the other hand, that was by design, intentional. A lot of their tactics in many cases are just brute force in numbers. And if you look at it that way, or individual duels and crap like that. So the fact that so many of these units would be considered cavalry or raider units or intercept units as opposed to stand your ground and duke it out units puts them at some disadvantage. The average DCMS officer has to have a passing knowledge of tactics and mobility and thinking outside the box, even though they are conditioned to think very strictly within the box that's been presented to them. It's kind of a conundrum, and only the dumb, the brilliant, the lucky, or the dead manage to break out of that box. And if you're lucky and you're talented and you pull off whatever it is you were trying to do, and it's deemed a success, you're good to go. If that thing, whatever you're trying to do, goes against the standard doctrine and the standard, we don't do this under any circumstances, and it fails, you're toast. And that's just the way it goes, right? So lots of good stuff, lots of great units in here. Some are, fewer units than what there were in 3025 or so. And we still got some of the ghost regiments listed in here. There's far fewer of these ghost regiments than originally. There was 3039. There was 12 of them. I think there's probably about 8 or 9 left. Some of them are completely destroyed by the clans, and some was disintegrated. So, right, is what it is. Right. I just like these units. You get great examples of how you can still play BattleTech and not representing exactly a upstanding house faction or something like that. Anyway, this is a great book. I loved it. I can't tell you how many years I've read and reread this thing. Easily read this thing a dozen times over the years. I've referenced it numerous times for tabletop games and for some campaigns when I did some MechWarriors stuff back in the day. Great book. Anyway, from Missy and me, till next time, you guys have yourself a great weekend. And if I get the right button, we'll be all happy, right? Yeah, right? Blah.